intro with the nice flow. Y'all acting like y'all don't know. Stop acting like y'all don't know.
Joe Campbell.
Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Causing chaos in the back of the bus. Get your hands up. We gon' show you how we buzz. Yeah. The future.
The beginning is now on a suddenly not so casual free Friday. It is October 14th, 2022. It is CFB, Knowledge for College, Week 7. The Shark and the Gun. It is Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. Guns picks. We're back. We're here. We're now. We are focused and ready to dominate. What's going on tonight, brother?
Listen, nobody can hold us down. Nobody can control us because we are the profit machines. And let me tell you why. I am 31-20-1. Starting from week 2, I am profit in the last 5 straight weeks, plus 23.45 units I have given to the fam. And guess what? I'm changing my attitude right now. I'm getting my inner macho man coming out, and I am bringing out the glasses for the foreseeable future. Ride the wave or get out of the water. I support my friend Shark always. Let's just get into week 7, shall we?
Not waiting around. 12 noon Eastern, 11 out in the Midwest. Champaign, Illinois. Illinois has been our friend all year until last week. Tommy DeVito got hurt. It all went awry. And the Minnesota Golden Gophers come in here in a revenge game, believe it or not. Actually, we talked about this numerous times. Illinois last year started their upward movement with some very impressive road wins to cap the season last year. One of those was a 14-6 win in Minnesota. Now Minnesota comes on the road, -6.5, a favorite. Guns picks, an official.
This is, I don't just like this game. I love this game. It is a box checker for me. Let me tell you why. Minnesota is coming off a home loss to Purdue 2 weeks ago. So they've already had a bye week. So they had to sit and marinate and stew on a loss. This is the first time they lost the net yardage battle too all season long. They have a plus 273 net yard average for the season. Now you look at Illinois. Illinois is 5-1 straight up, coming off an ugly win. So I think I'm starting to see the regression in Illinois against Iowa, 9-6. But they had a plus 94 net yard average in that game. Now you have Minnesota coming off the loss. It's a misleading loss. You know why? Because Mohamed Ibrahim, the heartbeat of that offense, did not play in that game. But guess who's going to play in that game? Mohamed Ibrahim. And that kind of picks up the tempo as far as the rushing game is concerned for Minnesota. Now, Illinois wants to run the ball. Chase Brown is having an electric season, 5.8 yards per carry, 206 yards per game on the ground at home, 4.9 yards per carry overall. Now, Minnesota's run defense, very solid, 3.5 yards per carry. They only give up to their opponents, 81 yards per game. So it kind of plays into what Minnesota does well as far as the defensive side and what Illinois wants to do on the offensive side. Now, Illinois will be without the quarterback, Tommy DeVito, like Shark just said, due to a high ankle sprain. So they're going to have to deal with this guy, Arthur Sitakowski. Sitakowski sounds like a guy that should be sitting on the bench. He did play a lot last year, but if you look at his stats in 2021, 50% completion rate, 4.8 yards per attempt passing, 6 touchdowns, 2 INTs. Those were on 5 starts. He was 2-3 straight up as a starter, minus 10-point differential, minus 120 net yard average when he was a starter. So this is playing into the Minnesota pick. Revenge game, folks. Revenge game. Minnesota lost to Illinois at home last season, 14-6 in ugly fashion when Minnesota was a 14.5-point favorite. So you have a Minnesota team off a bye after a loss in the previous game. Now they're favored on the road versus a 5-1 straight up team that is regressing, in my opinion. This is a perfect spot to take an away favorite, my friends. Give me Minnesota minus 6.5. This is a 2.5 unit risk play.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree. And of course, I talk about this all the time. when you buy a team so consistently, they will come down. And as Guns mentioned, the backup quarterback here, Sikowski, maybe he should be sitting on the bench. As exhibited last week, the guy cannot move the football, particularly in Leatherhead low scoring Big Ten football, where price on points is at a premium. Speaking of points being maybe not at a premium because they will be coming rampant and often, I'm going to my first play of this week 7 card. We're going to the MAC and we are going to the road locker room in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And we are fading Eastern Michigan. We're taking Northern Illinois +1 in the first half. A lot going on here. You have to go back to last year to get a feel for this Northern Illinois team. Last year, Northern Illinois was the class of the MAC. They finished 9-5 in the campaign. They made it to a bowl game, the Tail Greeter Cure Bowl, where they did lose to the now notorious Coastal Carolina team that just somehow manages to win week after week, having no business winning football games at this point in the schedule. But that all being said, this is a team that did finish at the top of the MAC last year with now senior quarterback Rocky Lombardi. Come back to this season, this team is sitting at 1-5 straight up. They've lost 5 straight ball games. They're 0-2 straight up in conference. And then we really get to look at what's going on here in terms of the first half versus the second half in what I call schedule scaling. And it's purely the psychological environment of these teams in slightly less regulated professional environments, the MAC versus, say, the Big Ten or the SEC, where these kids really do play up and down to the moment, week to week. You go back to last week, Northern Illinois at home got absolutely throttled in the first half, 35-7, by what appears to be the class of the MAC this year, Toledo. Go back to the previous week. Northern Illinois, in their conference road opener, did come out blazing hot on Saturday, October 1st at Ball State and melt the game off and not cover in double overtime. This team is 3-0 on the campaign on the road in the first half ATS. And you go to the other side of this game, you find Eastern Michigan coming home in an environment where they just do not play particularly well. I just mentioned this, and it's a bizarre coincidence. Northern Illinois lost the first half last week, 35-7. Eastern Michigan last week on the road won the first half, 35-7. So this is an absolute buy low and fade high environment. And the last time EMU did come home off a blowout road win at Arizona State, they came home and got hammered in the first half by conference opponent Buffalo. All boxes are checked here. The line's short. It's a revenge game, and the line split is short. When EMU is laying 2.5 for the game, they're only laying 1 for the first half. It's a short split indicating all the reversal points I just discussed. 1 unit play, Northern Illinois, stand the hell up on the road in conference, +1 unit. 3:30 p.m. Big 12 football. We are going to Texas Christian University hosting Oklahoma State. A revenge game, a great looking spot. Guns picks. I like the shades. I like the environment. Talk to me here. What's going on?
Fits the mold. It's not a just like play. It's an I love play. Let me tell you why. Listen, Oklahoma State's defense has had some struggles versus conference opponents this year. In the last 2 games, especially against the pass, they've allowed 345 yards passing to Baylor and 379 yards to Texas Tech. That's 93 yards above their opponent average. And I'm talking just about Texas Tech here. But let me talk about TCU for a second. TCU can beat you in many ways. They can beat you on the run. They average 230 yards per game on the rush, 6.6 yards per carry average. And in the passing game, 300 yards per game, 73.4 completion rate. Max Dugan is having himself a damn year. 1,305 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 1 INT. He is passing the ball at 10.3 yards per attempt. This is a TCU team that is completely flipped around after Gary Patterson left the team. Now, Oklahoma State is a good passing team as well. 311 yards per game passing, 60.9% completion rate. Spencer Sanders has 1,394 yards, 12 touchdowns, 2 INTs this season. But TCU does well against passing teams, holding their opponents to 54.4 pass completion rate, 43.1 pass completion rate at home. So Spencer Sanders is probably going to have a little bit of a struggle trying to complete passes versus this TCU defense. Now, for TCU, this is a revenge game. I mean, granted, the situations was a little bit different than they are now. Oklahoma State beat them 63-17 as 11.5-point dogs on the road last season. So Max Dugan did not play in that game because he was hurt. And then you also dealing with the Gary Patterson issue in the process. TCU is 5-0. They've faced what is considered a tougher schedule as far as strength of schedule is concerned. They are playing at home after a flat win on the road, playing a team missing their quarterback in 2021, smashed them bigly last year, and now you got them as a favorite at -4, -4.5, depending on what book you're looking at. I got them at -4 here. I think this is all TCU all day long at home. Horned Frogs, give me the hooks. I'm going to take them TCU -4 as the play.
Yeah, I like it. And this team has exhibited very sustainable quality this season. Obviously, a win last week against our favorite team, if not Illinois, Kansas. And of course, prior covers at SMU and a blowout win against Oklahoma as well, which I think you mentioned there. Staying course, we're going Conference USA. My second play, we're going 2 units here. We're going first half and game. We're taking Florida Atlantic, the Owls at home. First half -2.5 and game -3.5. A lot going on here. You find Florida Atlantic in a very similar position to Northern Illinois, coming home on a sustained losing streak. Florida International started the campaign 2-1. They're currently 2-4. They've lost 3 straight ball games, but situational opponent types. The last 3 games, they got hammered by a UCF team who is showing extreme quality as we go forward week to week. Couple blowouts in a row now, and a road loss, yet a cover at Purdue, who has been in and out of top moments within the Big Ten this year. And of course, last week, prior to a bye, October 1st, their first real dud of the entire year, a road conference game at North Texas. But when you really start to look at what's going on here, in the first half specifically, this team is 3-0 first half ATS at home this year. They are 1-0 in conference. It did come in week 0 against Charlotte. They were a short favorite. They absolutely demolished Charlotte in the first half and the game 43-13, the final. And you go to the opponent here, you find a great opportunity to fade Rice. Rice is coming off a bye themselves, and they're coming off a situational high. An outright win at home against UAB. UAB, a far better team, dominated the game. They had roughly 200 more yards of offense than Rice did, but Rice somehow got there on them 28-24. So you get a Rice team coming in here off a situational high, facing an FAU team off their worst environment of the year, an L3. And one final point, you go back to last year, Rice had the same schedule. Rice finished their non-conference season in early October, had a bye week, and then had their road conference opener at UTSA as an underdog and got absolutely slaughtered, 31-0 in the first half, 45-0 game. It checks all the boxes, top spot in Conference USA football on a suddenly not so casual Sunday, Saturday, October 15, 2022. FAU, first half -2.5, game -3.5. Guns picks. We're not going to the I-81 corridor in Harrisonburg. We're going on the road to Statesboro, Georgia, and you're still taking Old Reliable, very quickly ranked in the FBS season, James Madison University, an official.
James Madison ranked for the first time, and I guess I got to put the hat on to celebrate the Dukes. And I'm not talking about the ones that live in Durham, North Carolina. I'm talking about the ones that live in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And we're talking about the Dukes of JMU, and I'm going to be riding them until the train crashes. Let me tell you why. Listen, JMU is one of the hottest teams in G5. They are 5-0 straight up and against the spread. and they're off a 42-20 win over Arkansas State on the road. So that is kind of important into this play, and I'll tell you about the line correlation in a second. Now, JMU's strength is their defense. They hold their opponents to 1.4 yards per carry on the ground, 42 yards per game on the rush, 54.4 pass completion rate, and they can put pressure on the QB. They have a 13.2% sack rate. This team is so dominant. I love them to death because they are a cash machine all around. Now look at Georgia South. Opposite side of the spectrum on their defense. That's their weak point in this spot. They give up 457 yards to their opponents, 5.6 yards per carry on the ground, 62.6 pass completion rate, and they are not very good at getting at the quarterback. They only have 7 sacks this season for a 3.7% sack rate. So you're seeing a little bit of the yin and yang as far as the defensive comparison is concerned. Let's talk about the QBs on this one, though. Georgia South QB Kyle Van Treese, 60.8% completion rate, 6.8 yards per attempt, 13 touchdowns, 11 INTs. Not so great, but let's look at JMU for a second. Todd Centillo, 65.7 pass completion rate, 9.3 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns. Guess how many picks? 1. 15-1 ratio. That is what you want to see from your quarterback. Now, looking at the lines on this one, I did a little bit of comparison as far as the numbers are concerned. So Georgia Southern's comparisons as far as their opponents this season. They had to play at UAB where they were 12-point dogs and they lost by 14. They had to play at Coastal Carolina and they were 10-point road dogs in that situation. And, Coastal Carolina is kind of dealing with a downskid, especially on the defensive side, and they only lost by 4. Now Georgia South is playing at home, and they're playing JMU, and they are 10.5-point dogs. What a swing in the number, in my opinion. I think this is a play on JMU, and when you look at the rest of their schedule, there's going to be a lot more spots that we're going to be playing JMU. So get ready for the rest of the season. I'm going to be taking them here at minus 10.5, and I think that line did steam up. So I would take them up to 14, and I would stop at that point. So give me JMU, my line, minus 10.5 as the play.
Yeah, and I've taken this team multiple times this year. We talked about this as this team came into FBS football, going back to their first blowout win at home against, I believe it was Middle Tennessee State in the opener. This team just has an edge about them. This team just wants to prove their worth. Their first FBS season, they want to let people know they're here. And again, ranked number 25 in the country. Highly impressive stuff here out of the Sun Belt. I wouldn't disagree with this. I think they're on just an absolute revenge tour. And you'd laugh to yourself and say, revenge against what? I think it's just revenge against disrespect. They weren't promoted quickly enough. They were dominating FCS football, and they finally got their chance. They're here to stay. They're showing you why.
One other quick point I want to bring up this. It doesn't matter what JMU does at the end of the season. They're not allowed to win the Sun Belt Championship. They basically can dominate the entire field, and they can't play in the championship. So this is a chip on their shoulder type team, and I love it. JMU is going to be a play-on team in the future. I hope they turn into the Boise State that we used to know from like 2008, 2009.
Yeah, talk about throwback environment where, of course, before BCS and now the actual playoff, where that was what everybody always said. Versus NFL football, college football is great because every single Saturday is basically a playoff game. And you're seeing with JMU right here. And that's great stuff all around. Staying with great stuff, we're going to the SEC. We're taking Kentucky Wildcats at home, 1 unit plus 3.5. A lot going on here. This is the third straight game I've capped where you're finding a team on a losing streak. This team has lost 2 straight games dating back to October 1st. A loss, but a cover at Ole Miss, 14 in the country at that point in time, 22-19. And last week had the backup quarterback in there. And now they get their quarterback back. It looks like Will Levis, and obviously a huge, huge point here. This is just a great, great spot to fade Mississippi State. Mississippi State is in the sandwich of all sandwich spots. Mississippi State comes in here 4-0 ATS at home, 4 games at home, scoring 49 against Memphis, 45 against Bowling Green, a very impressive 42 against Texas A&M, and 40 last week in a blowout of Arkansas. They come in here off 3 authoritative offensive efforts and covers at home. They play a game at Kentucky, who defends very well. And next week on the road, 7 p.m. at Alabama. This is a look-ahead spot. This is a revenge spot for Kentucky. And this is where you want to fade Mississippi State as a corollary to their only conference road game, Saturday, September 17th at LSU. We just discussed how many points they score in conference at home. On the road, 16 points. 31-16 LSU. Kentucky should handle them. We love that plus 3.5 number. 1 unit official. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Carolina coming back home here. Guns picks on 4.5 now 6 unofficial. Talk to me, and then we will get to the music, the jams, and the hype of our last collaboration play.
This is not a just like, I love this play. I know I got a full card of I love this play, but man, do I love the board, especially when I have the data. Now look at ECU. They're coming off back-to-back road games. They beat UCF 48-28, losing and then losing to Tulane last week in what is considered an upset from anybody that saw the game. 24-9 last week. In the Tulane game, though, they actually won the net yards battle. But the key to the game was the turnovers. They were -2 turnover ratio in that game. Now, ECU is 3-3 straight up. They've won the net yards battle in all their games this season, plus 104 net yard average overall. And then you actually go and look into their losses. They lost by 1 to NC State. They lost to Navy by 3, and then they lost to Tulane by 15 last week. So they played a lot of close games. They played a lot of competitive games, just a lot of outliers that basically predicated their losses. They could easily be 6-0 versus being 3-3 straight up. Now, Memphis, their defense gives up 431 yards on the road. They are an absolute bad road team, by the way. 301 passing yards per game this season. That's what they give up. Now they gave up 366 yards passing to Houston, 371 yards to North Texas, 450 yards to Mississippi State. I'm picking out the passing teams as ECU can do running and they can do passing. Now Memphis is historically a good home team and a bad road team. Overall, they are 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 road games, and they are 2-7-1 in their last 9 games as an away dog. And if you want to go a little bit further in this one, Memphis is 2-12 against the spread versus ECU dating back to 2001. ECU on the other side, 6-0-1 against the spread after a loss, 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 home games. So I'm playing the play on team. A team that is coming off a brutal loss versus Tulane. You have a Memphis team that is just absolutely terrible on the road and a playoff always when they're on the road. And it's also a conference opponent. I think ECU comes out here and absolutely smokes the absolute shit out of Memphis Tigers here. Give me ECU -4.5 as a 2.5 unit risk play.
On a Southern Not So Casual Senate Saturday, October 15th, 2022. The Florida State Seminoles come home in an opportunity to dominate a top play, a collaboration play, the gun and the shark. And what is going on here? You find the Clemson Tigers coming in here on a 12-game winning streak. I repeat, a 12-game winning streak. A 6-0 team on the campaign. And you get Florida State coming in here in an environment where they have lost 6 consecutive ball games to Clemson, dating back to 2014. I don't know where I was at that point in time. I don't even know who the quarterback, Jameis Winston, probably even before his time. It was a long time ago, and you get the environment. You want to fade Clemson. Clemson 6-0, their last true road game against an opponent of this quality. Of course, last week they did demolish Boston College on the road at Wake Forest. Minus 7.5, did not cover the spread, won by 6 points in 2 overtimes, 51-45. Probably could have lost that game outright 3 different times. This team is trending towards a loss. It's their only road conference sequence of the entire year. FSU comes in here off 2 straight losses. As I mentioned before, 6 straight to Clemson. And one final point, you have to go back to last year. FSU did not cover on the road on a plus 9.5, 30-20. And I talked about this before I took them against LSU in the first big conference game or non-conference game of the year. That game was defined by one of, if not the worst backdoors in FBS football last year. That was a 3 or 4 point game. Final play of the game, the run around, throw the ball around, pitch it back, and it got returned for a touchdown. And Clemson did cover the game. Clemson should not have covered that game. It was a super tight game. It was the beginning of the uptick for Jordan Travis and Mike Norvell in this window. And the line is short. 9.5 at home in conference. Revenge should hover around 6.5 on the road because they covered. If that's the neutral point, it's super short. We're sitting at plus 4.5. 1 unit, guns picks. What's going on?
Fully aligned as I put on what is considered the buy-on hat that I think we keep putting on week to week, and this team keeps cashing for us, even though they do ruin the wins off bad coaching decisions. But I'm not going to judge Mike Norvell. I'm going to just judge the team in general. Now, look at Clemson. They haven't hit a flat spot in the last 2 or 3 weeks. They beat BC 31-3 last week and covering the spread. They go and they beat, and the week before that, they go and beat NC State, a pivotal game, 30-20. Now look at FSU. They're coming off back-to-back losses, including a 2-point heartbreaker against NC State, where they should have won that game if it wasn't for some piss-poor decisions in the fourth quarter. But we got the cover as a 3-point dog, plus 80 net yards in that game. And they held NC State's offense, a really electric offense, to 78 yards below their season average. Now let's look at FSU for a second in the offense. 466 yards per game, 520 yards per game at home. They run the ball at 5.6 yards per carry at a clip, pass 9.1 yards per attempt. This is a really good offense. Jordan Travis is having himself a year, 63.2% completion rate, 9 touchdowns, 3 INTs. But he is a mobile quarterback. He wants to run, so they get a lot of the points on the ground. Now, while Clemson has done well stopping the run, 2.2 yards per carry, they have yet to face a rush offense like Florida State this year. They faced Georgia Tech, Furman, La Tech, Wake Forest, NC State, and BC. Those aren't rushing teams at all, or they're just lackluster offensive juggernauts at that matter, if you can call them juggernauts. I'm being sarcastic. This is a revenge game for FSU, by the way. FSU losing to Clemson 30-20 last season on the road as 9.5-point dogs. Home team has covered 4 out of the last 5 matchups. The line is sitting at 4.5, and I think it's steaming down. I like this team up to 3 plus 3. And let's just ride the points because we don't know if FSU is going to step on their dick at the end. I just know they're going to cover it from 3 plus 3 and on. So you have a Clemson team that have played their 3rd road game in 4 games. So there's probably a little bit of jet lag, a little bit of fatigue in this spot. This is the best team. This is the best of them in a 4-game stretch. In my opinion, this screams take Florida State, and we're going to do it once again. We're going to ride the Noles to the grave. Give me Florida State plus. I got the line at 4.5, so I consider that a gift to the gods, but I'll take it up to plus 3 as the play.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing all different linemen. We see some 3s, some 3.5, some 4.5, and some 5s. So it's all over the place. And as we said, I think Florida State gets off the schneid here. I think Florida State wins this game outright. I think Clemson has it coming to them. I think they've been flirting with it for a while now. I think Florida State is ready and ripe to get off this 8-year hiatus winning football. And that will be an environment of all environments tomorrow night in Tallahassee. Staying within the conference of the ACC, we're going to Durham, North Carolina. Guns Picks, an official, looking at a intra-state rivalry here against North Carolina, +7. What's going on here?
I don't like this play at all. I just love this play, and let me tell you why. This is rivalry. It doesn't matter if it's basketball. It doesn't matter if it's baseball. It doesn't matter if it's girls volleyball. Duke hates UNC. UNC hates Duke. This is a rivalry game, and we have it in college football. And let me tell you what's going on with UNC. They've just been way too hot after that loss to Notre Dame at home. They beat Virginia Tech 41-10. They beat Miami 27-24. However, those two teams are bottom feeders in the ACC, in my opinion, including the Miami Hurricanes, which has been an absolute disappointment altogether. They should fire their coach. Duke is off an upset loss, by the way. They had to take Georgia Tech into overtime. They lost 23-20. Completely flat after a revenge win over UVA, and a tough road loss the week prior to the UVA game against Kansas, which they lost the cover by a half a point. Now, Duke is playing at home in this spot, which they do very well. If you look at the statistics of how they do at home, 432 yards of total offense. They hold their opponents to 276 yards of offense, which is a plus 156 net yard average. Now, while UNC relies heavily on their offense, they are very good. Drake May is going to be the future of the Tar Heels here, but their defense is absolutely awful. They give up 465 yards to their opponents, 68.3 completion rate, 4.8 sack rate. They don't put pressure on the quarterback. They give a lot on the pass, and this plays heavily into the Duke play. Now, look at Duke's defense. Strong at home. 276 yards of offense, 52.3 pass completion, 102 yard average, below every team they play as far as the offense is concerned. So when you play Duke at home, your numbers are going to drop completely. Triple revenge. I'm not talking single. I'm not talking double. This is triple revenge. They lost in 2019, 20-17 on the road as 3.5-point dogs, 56-24 in 2020 as 11.5-point dogs, home dogs, and then 2021, 38-7 as 19.5-point road dogs. They are sitting here as 7-point dogs at home. My God, what a shift in the line from last year to this year. I don't care what you say about UNC. I don't care what you say about Mac Brown. Everybody says that UNC owns Duke. Not in this spot, my friend. This is a new Duke. This isn't the Cutcliffe Duke. This is the new Duke. This is an electric offense, a defense that is going to play highly motivated at home, especially with what they had to deal with to get there. I think this is going to be a perfect spot for them against their rival. Give me Duke +7, 2.5 unit risk play.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree. I mean, we had this a couple weeks ago as the top player on the board against UVA in conference, a revenge game with the same type of line dynamic. And you're just looking at a team, as you mentioned, that's great defending the ball and really pounds the run across different backs. A very nice running scheme. I think they could really control the pace here and actually see less points in the game, but that's an aid point for Duke if there are less points in the game. And one final point, Mac Brown and this UNC team, as you mentioned, they just cannot defend. Every single game with them is just get the lead and give it right back, go down 2 scores, come back to neutral, back and forth. It's pure chaos with this team. So we're going to see a lot of things going on in this game. It's going to be a great watch here. Of course, ACC Network, not national, but a great look by the gun here at +7. Staying with the gun, final play of the board. We're going to Salt Lake City, Utah. Utah comes home here. Actually, second home game in a row, I believe. Number 20 in the country, catching a 6-0 USC team. A trend of the board, maybe it is. Fading 2 6-0 teams on one weekend. Guns Picks, Utah -3.5, an official.
I can't pick another team that is worth selling more than the USC Trojans right now. In USC, first 3 games of the season, let's look at their offense for a second. They had 500 plus yards of total offense in their first 3 games. They played Rice, Fresno State, and Stanford. But in their last 3 games, they dropped their offensive production off the mat. They never got over 369 yards of total offense in any of the previous 3 games. To have success versus UNC, it's very simple. Run the damn football and run it down their throat. They give up 4.6 yards per carry to their opponents, and they gave up 5.5 yards per carry last week to Washington State in Washington State's loss, and USC did cover. Utah is, guess what, a run team. They average 5.1 yards per carry, 202 yards per game on the ground. And they have a quarterback with mobility in Cameron Rising. Now you look at Utah has struggled on their defensive side with mobile quarterbacks. But let's look at the numbers here, because this is something that keeps brought up to the media or any other analysis. I was like, oh, they struggle against mobile quarterbacks. Caleb Williams is technically mobile, but not as mobile as the quarterbacks that Utah has faced. He only averages 3.4 yards per carry on the ground. In the losses that people keep bringing up, they gave up DTR for UCLA. Is he a running quarterback? Yes, he is. 5.5 yards per carry is what he averages. And then they had AR-15, Anthony Richardson for Florida in week 1, which was a game that probably Utah should have won. 6.1 yards per carry this kid averages. So we're dealing with 2 different types of the spectrum. Caleb Williams wants to throw the ball, stay in the pocket. He doesn't want to run. He only has to run when he needs to. So you have Utah sitting at home. They are 20-1 straight up in their last 21. And if you want to go a little bit further with that one, 5-0 against the spread after a loss, 19-8 against the spread in their last 27 conference games. You have USC on the other side, 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 conference games, and 2-5 against the spread off an ATS win. The only team that had beat them at home prior is USC. You don't think Utah wants this game more than anything? They already have 2 losses. They got nothing to lose in this game. USC has a lot to lose in this game. This is why the line is sitting with Utah as a favorite. So don't get tricked into taking USC based on their record and based on their offense. Their defense stinks. This is a sell team altogether, and I'm going to be riding this team all the way on a beautiful Saturday night in the dark. I'm sure the crowd is going to be rocking there. The air is going to be thin, and USC is going to be looking for oxygen because Utah is going to demolish this team. Give me Utah -3.5 as the play.
Yeah, and a couple points on that. We talk about this when we look at any sport, and it's basically the idea that the obvious is usually the incorrect side, because obviously, and I want to make this point because we haven't talked about this in a long time. Guys like us, we were Joe Obvious at one point in time. Go back 12 years ago, you better believe I was taking USC here. Wow, an undefeated team is an underdog and I get it that cheap? You evolve as you see these outcomes and you start to understand the line is an expected average in the game. It's not a price. So the price idea is false. You're not getting a cheap price with USC. What you're getting is an average, an expected result moving away from them and moving to Utah. This is a very sharp take. I talked about this with Jay Money earlier in the week. I might tail this at 8 o'clock on Fox Sports. And one final point on that as well. Guns knows this better than I do as a deep follower of college football over the past 20 years. There's always 1 or 2 weeks, particularly in conference season, usually week 7, 8, or 9, where all the undefeateds go down in one weekend. And you're watching SportsCenter, and they're just dumbfounded. They can't believe, wow, all the unbeaten's lost. And when we take a step back from that, we say to ourselves, were they supposed to run the table? No, they're not. These teams are not supposed to run the table. Conference schedule is difficult. The travel is difficult. The rivalries are difficult. The home teams have a huge, huge energy advantage with fan bases making a ton of noise when the other team is on offense. All boxes are really checking here for a great Utah take. My five top plays, 9 words of lifestyle, rather than out of the water. Northern Illinois, first half, +1, 1 unit. FAU, first half, -2.5, 1 unit. FAU game, -3.5, 1 unit. Kentucky coming back here. Starting quarterback should be back in there, catching Mississippi State in a dead zone trap spot, +3.5. And a collaboration with the gun, FSU, +4.5, 1 unit. Guns picks, 12 noon, high noon. It is Minnesota, -6.5 on the road at Illinois. TCU, 3:30. Versus Oklahoma State at home, revenge rivalry game in the Big 12. JMU continuing the upward movement. Great point by the gun. They don't have a postseason berth within the conference, so they take every game far more seriously than you. You being this week, Georgia Southern, FSU collab, ECU -4.5, 6. Duke +7, Utah -3.5. CFB Knowledge for College, Week 7, Friday, October 14th. 2022, the Shark and the Guns picks. A pleasure as always. Close them out with some words, domination, and let's dominate this card.
Going back to what Shark said is like the undefeateds are going to lose this week. Well, at least 6 will, because you have undefeateds going up against each other in at least 6 games. But there could be more, and I think one of those sits in Utah. But thanks for joining us. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button for us. Like, and subscribe to the Dad Bods channel. And I appreciate everybody that's been watching. And make sure you follow Shark's new account at SharksInSports88. The man got taken down by the trolls, but we rebuild and we keep flying along. Thanks for everybody that's joining us. We've had an incredible engagement as far as YouTube is concerned. Appreciate everybody in the chat for speaking up. And I will share that stuff as we do a show. And also everybody that's watching on Twitter as well. Till next time, we're going to be join us for the 10 a.m. Circa Million show where we break down the NFL. Till then, let's cash some tickets. Let's win some money. And as always, let's keep dancing.